A profound geopolitical shift is underway and African nations are at its center. The continent is now presented with an unprecedented opportunity to reshape global power relations, driven by a confluence of factors. Africa's vast reserves of critical minerals, essential for green energy and digital revolutions, as well as its youthful consumer market and its strategic voting bloc in international forums. Let's talk more about this with Professor Carlos Lopes from the University of Cape Town's Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance. Professor, thank you for your time. I think the first question that one often looks at when it comes to Africa is that vast resources and beyond the critical minerals and geographics. What are the lesser discussed sources of leverage that African nations possess in this new geopolitical moment?
You know, the colonial model was built on the principle that our natural resources would develop other regions of the world. So the wealth of Africa in terms of natural resources has not really been used for Africa's economic transformation. And this is because the regulatory systems that have been put in place, the way the international banking system has worked, the risk assessments that are done by rating agencies, a whole gamut of rules-based systems were not favorable to latecomers. And our industrialization has suffered as a consequence. And as a result, we have not been really adding value with our natural resources for our own profits. So now we have something happening that is quite unique. The rule books are being thrown out by those who helped shape them. And we have now a questioning of all the international regulatory systems by those who have actually made them. And Africa should not be the one that is going to defend a legacy that is not his making. It's not its making, and it's not something that has been advantageous for the continent. So we have to use this opportunity. It's a unique one.
Yeah, certainly. In fact, one would even look at the recent conversation about how Africa even positions itself on a map, the fact that it's been scaled down. But the reality is there is still that conversation about our resources and that we're often seeing things being taken out of Africa but not being put back in. How do we, of course, mitigate that issue of just Africa being an exporter, but really the hard work, the resources, the money not filtering back to those nations?
By making sure that we exercise agency in a way that is a bit more sophisticated. There are three mega trends, and we should see them as a combination that favors Africa. The demographics, the technological developments, and of course, climate change imposing environmental standards that are new and much more advanced in terms of the production systems. So if we take those three into consideration, we'll realize that it's not just that we have critical minerals that are absolutely necessary for the technologies being developed and being enhanced. It's not just the fact that we have renewable energy that will help the transition to a more cleaner energy matrix. It's also the fact consumers of the new technologies, because the more the populations age, and we know that most of the world is aging very fast, the more difficult there will be the absorptive capacity of these populations. Whereas for us, it's exactly the opposite challenge. We have to create the conditions for these young people to be an asset for the world, not just for Africa. And this is not just theory. It's something that is going to happen quite fast because artificial intelligence is going to accelerate most of the production processes as we know them into an era where intellectual property rights, which is sort of the mother of various regulatory systems, is going to be questioned. Because artificial intelligence is basically about not admitting the combination of knowledge and property. It's going to be very difficult. You can steal, you mine the data, you transform it, and you are going to have a democratization of certain types of access, and the value is going to migrate much more into who controls these various systems, and we have to be part of that game.
Yeah, and there's, of course, that very real risk of Africa becoming a new arena for proxy competition between major powers. What strategies can the continent employ to avoid this fate and instead force external powers to compete on Africa's terms?
It's already happening. And paradoxically, people think it's just about this duality of China and the United States because they are sort of leading the technological front. No, what is happening in Africa is that most of the investments of late are coming from middle powers, the Gulf countries, Turkey. Even this last few days, we had a huge interest expressed by a country like Singapore. And so we have these middle powers realizing that for the future of these certain types of markets and technologies, they will need the youthness of Africa, but also if they want to control the pace of the energy transition in the case of the Gulf states, they better be in Africa because this is going to be absolutely essential as a competitor. So we have to look into these various expressions of interest and exercise agency. And I think what happens is that most of African, Pan-African platforms are always looking for consensus. And what we need is clarity more than consensus. We need to know exactly what we are after, and we need to understand the geopolitical game is going to be completely different.
Certainly. Well, that is Professor Carlos Lopes from the University of Cape Town's Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance.